Nakanjani ngisho kungedlula iminyaka ngeminyaka uma nje uyogcina utshozile wachusha kulowo magagasi wahlambela kulolu gu wawelela kulezi zihlabathi esengatshalwa ngabethelwa kuzo nakanjani ngobe ngikulindile ngiyokuhayela leya nkondlo engayihaya ukude wasondela engayihaya useduze wanamathela ngiyoculela le yangoma engiyicule kuThangi engiyicule izolo usengapha sisendawonye
Babu Sibiya Kumete Ndaba inkondlo emnandi kangaka Sibonge Kumete. Yes, I must say I'm feeling so privileged to be talking to the amazing, to the great Dokotela Nakanjani Sibiya. Welcome to Afrolit Frontier, a platform that was started early in 2020 by the amazing Zukiswa Wena. And it has hosted many writers across the continent. And today, you and I are having a party discussing literature yesiZulu.
Yes.
So manje umbuzo wami kuwena ukuthi uloba ngesiZulu ingani uloba ngesiZulu awusazi isingisi?
Hey singikhipha inkani isingisi. Cha ukuloba ngesiZulu kuyazenzakalela ngoba isiZulu isona engisaze ngaphambi kwangazi ezinye izilimi isona zathi soqala ulimi lwebele ngakho kuyazenzakalela nje ukuthi konke okwenzekayo kwenzeka ngolimi lwebele ngakho akuzange kube ukuthi isinqumo ukuthi ngibhale ngesiZulu iyona into engangase ngibhale ngayo ngoqhubeka kwesikhathi ke mhlawumbe umuntu esesazi nakancane isingisi isidingo sokubhala ngesingisi bengakaze ngisibone ngoba ngikholwa ukuthi isiZulu isona esingidingayo kunesingisi ngoba ilapho okunezinto eziningi okusafanele zenziwe ababhali ukuthuthukisa imibhalo ukuthuthukisa ulimi ukunothisa ulimi nokuheha abantu ukuthi bafunde incwadi zesiZulu ngakho ke abelungu bengase bayakwenza lokho bekwenzela isingisi kodwa ithina esingamaZulu noma esingamaXhosa esingabaSwati okufanele silungise okwethu kuqala bese ke siqhubekela kwezinye izilimi.
Makeba. Ngithi manje, you know, your writing career spans 30 years. And I was saying just before we started the session that I'm feeling slightly intimidated because I'm talking to literary royalty. I'm talking to a literary royal. So, you know, it is really a great honor for me to be sitting here, you know, and speaking with you. And I really want to take you back. Please do tell our viewers wherever they are, you know, and if you like, don't be shy to explain this beautiful name of yours, Nakanjani Sibiya, a name that I've never heard before, by the way. Wena nje Nakanjani owokuqala nqa you know engibaziyo. So who is Dr. Nakanjani Sibiya, you know, and how did your journey of ukuloba ubhala ama-novel, ubhala indaba ezifushane, ubhala ama-plays, ubhala inkondlo, you know, so you're writing novels, poetry, plays, radio plays, you know, so you're quite prolific in the range of work that you produce. So who is Nakanjani Sibiya and how did this journey start?
Nakanjani Sibiya comes from Gcotsheni, deep rural KwaZulu-Natal. My journey started very early. I was quite relatively young when I started writing, but perhaps that was induced by my background. I come from a literary family, particularly on my maternal side. So I grew up knowing that one doesn't have to die first before they could write. One doesn't have to be yeah, I realized early enough that writing can be done by ordinary people. It doesn't have to be somebody that comes from somewhere. It can emanate from within one's immediate environment. So I started writing at an early age. My first collection of short stories was published. I was in matric when my first collection of short stories was published, and I was still young and handsome and stronger and all that. So from
You're
that,
still very handsome, I was telling you.
okay. Then I realized that I could, as soon as that was published, I gained some confidence that not necessarily a weak or I gained some confidence, and then I explored other avenues and other genres. As we have mentioned, I've written across genres, and
Yes.
and I was fortunate that as soon as I finished my university studies, I was offered a job by a publishing company where I served as an editor. That exposed me to a wide range of literary talent that I had to nurture and guide through the paces. So hence a proliferation of my writings when I edited and compiled and did all sorts of things.
Wow, so you've worked in publishing as well. So you understand the machinery behind ukuphablisha kweyincwadi.
Yes, they kept me for 10 years. Yeah.
Robben Island, yakwa publishing.
Yes. So that's why I learned. I got to appreciate the dynamics of the industry, the stations, and how it has to be kept going. And it was a worthy imprisonment.
Well, we are glad you are free. Ndabezitha akusiqoqele kabanzana umalume wakho is uDBZ Ntuli, umlobi wodumo. Waziwa izwe lonke jikelele, you know. So bengifunda la ubhale khona ukuthi indeed he was a great influence on your life, the great DBZ Ntuli. Writer of short stories, novels. So ungakhuluma kabanzana ngomalume, usho ukuthi umalume naniphila kanjani nomalume, wayewumuntu onjani, and u-impacte kanjani kuwena, ukuthi ubhala kanjani, and your life as a writer in general.
Umalume mhlawumbe asiqale ngokuthi asingasebenzisi inkathi edlule masikhuluma ngayo. He's still alive. Yes. He's 80 years old now. Uma uthi angenabe ngaye, kungashona ilanga ngoba umalume kimina umngani, sisondelene kakhulu naye. Into ke asiza ngayo kungase kube kuningi okunye ngokuthi nje waye umalume wami ngakhula kumalume, but okuningi ngakubukela ke njengoba ngishilo nje ukuthi ngisemncane ngasheshe ngabona ukuthi akudingeki ukuthi uze ube isimanga somuntu ngaphambi kokuthi ubhale. Ngakho-ke ngicathi ngiqala ukubhala nami kwakulula ukuthi kube khona umuntu engizoyisa kuyena imisebenzi yami ngithi nakho engikubhalile ngicela ungibonele ukuthi kunjani. Kusukela lapho-ke encwadini yokuqala sasondelana kakhulu ezingeni manje lokuba ngababhali so babili. Mningi imisebenzi esiyenze naye, ngaba nelungelo lokuthi ngibhale ngempilo yakhe, i-biography yakhe ngayo iyabhalwa yimina noNcamisile Makhambeni. Ngakho kuningi kakhulu izinto esenze naye, njengoba ngisho ngashona ilanga uma ngase ngixoxe ngayo. Ube nethonya elikhulu-ke embhalweni yami, mhlambe ngokofuzo kungase kushiwo lokho, kodwa kuningi ebesikwenza naye izeluleko. Awukho umsebenzi esengeke ngawubhala ngingaxoxanga naye, ngaba umxoxela nje ukuthi nanku umsebenzi engwebha. Umuntu okhuthaza nayo kakhulu konke osuke ukwenza empeleni kusafanele ugweme ukumtshela into ongezukwazi ukuyiqeda ngoba uzode ebuza kuhamba kanjani usekuphelile lokho. Ngakho umuntu ongilekelela kakhulu kukho konke nje impilo yami, ukufunda, ukubhala njengoba sesithangameni esiphathelene nembhalo. Njengoba ngisho awukho umsebenzi esengeke ngawubhala asaze saxoxa ngawo bese ukungikhalima-ke mhlawumbe okunyasho ukuthi hayi uma singakwenza kanje, kodwa futhi iqiniso kufanele ngigcizelele ukuthi akakaze angibhalele lutho ngoba ngankathi kuphuma incwadi yami yokuqala njengoba ngishilo ngangincane. Ngakho bakhona ababethi hayi uyibhalele umalume wakhe. Kodwa sekubonakala-ke manje la ukuthi ukube wayengibhalele yokuqala ngabe kuyamkhandla ke lokho ngoba zonke lezi ncwadi ezisemashumini amahlanu ngabe njalo ude engibhalela ngabe asakhulumisana ngoba ngabe uthwele umsebenzi wokuhlala engibhalela. So in brief, he has played a major role in shaping my career, literary and otherwise.
Dabizit, I'm actually going to start, in 2020, because you have recently written your very first collection of English short stories.
Yes.
So before we go into discussing that, could you just, the title of your collection and the main story is The Reluctant Storyteller. I would have thought the village storyteller, but you also say in the book that you were a runner-up in the village drunk contest. Am I correct?
No. That is the narrator, not
the narrator,
author.
not you, not the author. The narrator was the contender.
Yes.
The narrator has nothing to do with this title or village drunk. Akahlangane ndawo naleyo title.
Yes, it is the narrator.
It's the narrator. No. Sorted. So thank you for clarifying that. So, I'm interested in this title, The Reluctant Storyteller. So maybe read us an excerpt first before you talk us through why the title, The Reluctant Storyteller.
Okay. And how long or you will let me know when I have to stop?
I think a minute or so would be nice, just to give us a taste of the flavor of your work.
No, but my stuttering, you have to give me more than 1 minute.
More than 1 minute
to accommodate my stuttering.
I must give you more than 1 minute. No, you can have as many minutes as you like. As many minutes as you like. We shall accommodate you fully, Babusmi.
Yeah. We had one program director in the village who presided over all events, from the Sunday schools year-end functions to village prayer meetings for divine intervention during droughts. Soon there was an increase in the number of children who became amapara in the village, right after graduating from Sunday school. Prolonged drought wreaked havoc on crops, especially our dacha and livestock. Villagers were murmuring that the problem started when the program director presided over the village solemn and sacred occasions. Unfortunately, he couldn't be replaced, as he was rumored to conduct nocturnal visits to his enemies' homes, riding a baboon. Bad luck or ailment will then befall that household. So it was out of fear rather than choice that the village had him as a program director. Our program director didn't spend much time at school and obviously didn't pay attention during his short stint at Tojeni Primary School. He had a flair for big words, but didn't bother about the correct use thereof. It wasn't uncommon to hear him introduce the trio during events by saying, "We will now get a solo from the Three Sons. Descend to the stage, Madam. A big round of applause, please." And the audience would clap hands uproariously and urinate in appreciation for the singers, of course. The starry-eyed teenagers would sing and perform miracles, making us dance at funerals and weep during weddings, particularly if the event coincided with abundant inebriating drinks, rendering us deeply emotional and making us miss places we had never been to, such as Disneyland. That's how good the trio were. We could tell that they were destined for great things. And I had already impressed on them the need to appoint me as their manager or agent to enhance their chances of prosperity and fame.
Fantastic. When I read your story, it was absolutely hilarious. But I must say, Babu Sibiya, it felt like a bit of an ambush because it is, it's deceptively, humorous and so poetic and beautiful, but it then kind of draws you in and just twists you, it puts you in a kind of tumble dryer, and Upuma, out of the story thinking, oh my goodness, what happened? It's so dramatic, so it really has a lot of twists and turns. And as I said to you, that I have just acquired it and I've started reading it. So I'm looking forward to going back and reading it, and it feels as though you are the village psychologist or the storytelling psychologist, in terms of the range of themes that you cover. Really, really quite dramatic and very involved. Very involved.
Yes, and some background on the title story. When I intended submitting the manuscript to the publishers, the arrangement was to send 12 stories, most of which I had translated from my mother tongue, isiZulu. And it was an exhausting exercise. I was trained and then I decided to just have fun. So the Reluctant Storyteller was an afterthought. I just decided that I have finished this and let me just have fun. Hence the tone and the direction of the story. Well, in part, I wanted to tell my journey where I come as a writer. Why did I decide to write in English? How has my writings been received? Like at the beginning of the story, I do allude to what I've mentioned, that when my first book came out, some people felt that I was not good enough. Although my second name is good enough, they felt I was not good enough to have written at such a tender age to have. Hence, their contention that my uncle had written that. So I allude to that. So it's partly autobiographical, but then I am just pulling the readers to make them. One, is he talking about himself, or is it the narrator or something? And I do a lot of name dropping as well to make the story as plausible as possible, so that the reader is left doubting whether is he for real? Is this what happened? But some of the things that I mentioned are things that you will come across one day when I take you to Xocheni. It's a village. I was trying to showcase the beauty of the village, the characters. Some are fictitious, but some are people you will find when you go to Xocheni.
Hey, ubuhle bendawo ngempela uma ufunda incwadi cha uyabona ukuthi eGcotsheni kuhle ngempela. Kodwa into kumnandi kuhle futhi nabantu bakhona ngathi nje uma ngifika ngizovakasha cha I really ngifuna ukubabona bonke labantu abahlala lapha ema-joint. Mele ngifike endaweni ngivakashela ama-joint akhona. It's really indawo emnandi. Ngithi manje ke in terms of isihloko sakhona, isihloko sakhona sithande ukuba nzima ndaba ezitha in terms of what happens to one of the characters, ngoba you don't shy away from udaba lwe abuse, and coming from a different angle, udaba lwe abuse, so into engiyibonile ngokuloba kwakho ukuthi ubuka indaba ibe balanced, so ubuka okuhle ngeGcotsheni, ubuke futhi the not so good aspects of it. So I saw you don't shy away from that, ubuka kube balance. So abanye abantu abagxeki mhlawumbe bathi hey kodwa i-dirty linen yethu Babu Sibiya in public uyenza kanjani into ekanje?
No. I've never come across such concerns. In most cases, our stories are celebrated and they are contextualized in terms that one wouldn't like to make our village sound like some utopia of some sort. It's like the next village. Some challenges, some worthy news to share with the world. But we also contend with all the ills that permeate our societies. So it's yeah. So to respond to your question, akekho oseke wathi ukusholani lokho ngathi ngoba bayazi ukuthi okunye kusuke kususele ekhaya. So one just uses igcotsheni as a background because as a writer you have to write from a familiar background, so that you know how to pitch your story, so that when to exaggerate, when to pour some aromat into and get away with it. So if I were to write about base my stories on a different village, I would sound some events will sound contrived and characters will sound not real to life, as one would have loved to come across them in literature or in a literary work.
Ndaba zithi manje uloba mhlawumbe ngenhloso thizeni, a particular purpose, uloba noma, as you say, you're just having fun, and uloba ngendawo eyaziyo ngabantu abaziyo, if kunama issues thizeni that you address eindatshaneni zakho, so be it, or what is your primary reason? Yabona kune purpose omhlambe nje uyazilobela nje kube mnandi ukuthi nayi indaba bosa sondelani, indaba emnandi. Yini inhloso yakho umulomo?
Inhloso engakaze ngiyibhalele. I've never written any piece of work to sound didactic. If I were to use that term, I do not write to preach or to correct ills and morals. A writer is supposed to tell us a beautiful story. As long as there's a beautiful story, don't worry yourself about is this going. Although at the back of your mind, you would like to perpetuate some stereotypes and or inflict emotional pain on people who are going to read those. But what comes first should be a good story. So for me, as soon as I have a beautiful idea that I would like to share, a story that germinates, that is worth sharing. So for me, that is a starting point. So I cannot say I write for any particular reason beyond sharing the ideas in the form of a story with my audience. But then for isiZulu, another responsibility that we have as writers is to introduce new things into isiZulu. So one has to write as broadly as possible, so that if there are new narrative techniques that are not yet available in isiZulu, so one has to write with a particular intention that I've come across this in an English novel. So what can I do to introduce that, so that our writing should not be regarded as sister cousins of our English counterparts? So primarily is to tell a good story, but in a manner that is going to enrich the literary canon of isiZulu without necessarily preaching or yeah. So mina ngibhala uma ngibuza ukuthi sithini isifundo kusokuyona inhloso yami, ngifuna ukuxoxa indaba emnandi ozothi uma uyifundile uxoxele izingane zakho ukuthi hayi ngifunde indaba emnandi. Ngakho ke umuntu ozoyibuka usezothi esiZulwini sekuyabhalwa ngale ndlela, nazi izindikimba sekukhulunywa ngazo. Ngakho we wouldn't like to be left behind. If people other writers are addressing xenophobia, we also should address such issues. We can't dwell on the past. So we have to flow with the trends that permeate the literary landscape.
Ndinayo ke icover yencwadi. Where's the camera? This way. In The Reluctant Storyteller. So njengoba usho Ndaba Ezitha ukuthi we have to move with the times. One of the stories in here inesihloko esithi Ben 10. Isihloko sakhona ithi Ben 10.
Yes.
Nakanjani Sibiya manje ke chazela ababukeli la behleli khona ukuthi iBen 10 ikusho ukuthini ukuthi Ben 10?
Ngisho mina abantu ku-age group yethu asakwazi ukuqualify kuba Ben 10, so we missed that trade. Babathi Ben 10 umuntu othandana nomuntu omdala owesilisa othandana nomuntu omdala kakhulu kunaye, so bese ebizwa ngo Ben 10. So kuleyo ndaba ngangizama ukubheka ukuthi while it's a normal aspects of love relations dynamics, but then what can happen if one falls in love with somebody not knowing what is in store for them? Would we heap criticism on them? Should they follow their hearts if they meet somebody online? And what are the challenges and what are the risks? So I was trying to look at that from that perspective.
It's very interesting. So it's the really sort of riveting and dramatic tale of an older woman who is in love with a much younger man. So yeah. And a lot of your stories, as I said, they've got these saucy twists. So one can't wait to pick it up, and read it. It sounds like you are eavesdropping, on village gossip and what people are doing and talking about. It's really, really, really very fascinating. As I said, it's your first English offering. Do you have any plans to translate it into isiZulu? Because usually you uqala ngesiZulu and uloba ngesiZulu. But so are there any plans ukuthi uye in the other direction, we translate mhlambe uyibhale ngesiZulu?
Yeah, it won't be necessary for some of the stories because they already exist in isiZulu. They were translated in English. But for instance, when I compiled the collection, it was supposed to be titled One for the Road. There's a story, the bulk of the stories are translated from isiZulu, with the exception of the Reluctant Storyteller and One for the Road. So One for the Road has already been translated into isiZulu. So to answer you, there won't be a need to translate it back to isiZulu because that's where it originated from.
Okay.
But then I realized that it won't be easy to translate the Reluctant Storyteller into isiZulu because it won't. Yeah, some for instance, if its humorous tone wouldn't work in isiZulu, as far as I'm concerned, because something may be humorous in English, but when you try to tamper with it, it will need just a thorough revamping for it to fit into. Anyway, so
umuntu nokuthi makaze neziphuzo zakhe. Ungahaleli iziphuzo zabanye abantu.
Ngizongidonse ingudu yami la.
Bayizi ingudu. iFriday abanye abantu baphumile bayadansa. Thina amanethi dansa ngeencwadi lapha kwa-Afrolit South France.
Yes.
Ngithi indaba eziconsisa amathi. Ubhala ngani? Ubhala ngamadombolo mhlawumbe or fried chicken?
No, the Tontesa Amate, it's a collection of short stories and essays in Zulu. There is also some background to it. It took longer for the Reluctant Storyteller to be published, and it resulted in some frustrations. So to self-heal, I decided to write this in isiZulu, and it got published soon as this the uJojo buya angihluphe kula mali mama ngakho ke yagcina isiphume yala uyabaleka uJojo ma unamali so
so ke ngalesikhathi yabona nje sekushaya 8:30 usehambile uJojo idatha kaJojo isincane kakhulu esavuka idatha kaJojo khuluma ngekamagelo
so ke uziconsisa amathe izindaba ezifushane nama-essay eziningi ngizibhale ezinye zazo ngizibhale ngesikhathi se-lockdown ezinye ngithathe ezinye ezazi kwamanye amaqoqo angazange aqhame ngokwanele ngase ngizibuyisa lapha iqoqo lezindaba ezifushane eziyishumi nama-essays ama-essays ngayo ngaba nengosi kwelinye iphephandaba ngase ngithatha lo zinto lezo ngase ngizifaka kule ncwadi zase ziconsisa amatheke zonke
ayiziconsisa amathi ngempela bengisasho kuwena
before kakhulu
kushubile ndaba zimnandi ngendlela eyisimanga especially yona the type of stories eziconsisa amathi ngisho ukuthi hey you leave no 10 unstoned you tread where angels fear to tread uvesane ungene nje shikho lapho you know and as I said ukuthi indaba zakho zi-emotional ngendlela eyisimanga you know and then kulokhu you know ubukhuluma angazi indatshana yakhona isihloko sakhona sabuma blessa uyabona nje ukuthi abantu othathekile yabona umuntu nje abesane yazi abe impressed ubukhazikhazi ukuthi nje yazi nayo into irepwe kamnandi
bathi-ke kuleyo ndaba leyo uzigconsisa amathe mhlawumbe ngasale ngokuchaza nje kuye kwaba khona isikhathi lapho engangisebenza khona kwa-Department of Arts and Culture so sase sihambeke silaliswe nasemahhotela yabo sibe zikhulu so-ke sasiye siye eShakaland bese kuba khona ukunandisa some entertainment. And there was this guy, and I'm talking about something that happened some 10 years ago. So from in my performance, kwakunale insizwa lena eyayisitudla icula leli ethi undibona ndihleka ucabanga ukuthi ndonwabile. So that captured my imagination, this guy. So the story has always been which I would like to write something about a person who says, so for me, that was emotionally captivating. The guy, so the story is fictionalized around that character. But of course, I had to multi-layer it so that it becomes more enticing and yes.
And it seems you're quite fascinated by the whole sort of love story, you know, a genre. Although your stories are quite dramatic and they've got, you know, some really intriguing issues. Kodwa uthando hleze nje at the center of what you write about.
Yeah. In terms of thematic distribution, across literatures, and you will find that love as a theme dominates. So I think it comes naturally the same way as it does to other writers. So I wouldn't say I'm an exception in being attracted to love-related themes.
You're not a romantic.
No.
Isithandwa abalobi bonke abalobi bathanda ukubhala ngothando.
Yeah.
So ngisho ke in terms of as I said at the beginning, you know, you write many, your work span, ama novel, ama short stories, ama plays and so on. Is there, a form, that you would say, this is my favorite form? I think a lot of people feel as though the short story form is perhaps, where you are strongest. Do you have a favorite, and how would you describe yourself? Or do you think it doesn't really matter? It depends on the story. What form does it want to express itself in?
No, for myself, I think the short story is one genre that does it for me. I'm quite compatible with it, but the thing that can also be ascribed to the fact that I happen to be a lazy writer. Ngiyivila. Ngakho ngibe nawo idea for for instance, to take you back to the Reluctant Storyteller. I wanted to write a novel about yes, it's to address a theme that we tend to shy away from as writers and society, the male rape, where a man gets raped by another man. So I wanted there was a time when I wanted to write a novel, but then laziness derailed my plans. I couldn't. So I wanted to write something about a person, a man who is raped by another, and when they meet, things get chaotic. So Yes. So then, out of laziness, I decided to embed it, to have it embedded in this story. That is not necessarily addressing the issue, but it says, if one looks at the story, as that was the story that I wanted to tell. But then, as the narrator says, he doesn't think people will believe that this could have happened to a man at the yes. So ngamayimazi-ke ngigcina sengikuthola kulula ukubhala izindaba ezifishane kunokubhala indaba ende. Ziningi ezinye ngizishiya phakathi. Mhlawumbe okunye ngigcina senginqena mhlawumbe ayizukuba as interesting as kulula ukubona indaba emifishane ukuthi inhle inakho konke, kodwa in novel it's a tedious journey. You have to sometimes you lose confidence. You don't know whether this character was able to portray why you wanted to the flow of events. Sometimes you are stuck. You will start wondering if the reader will appreciate what you were trying to portray. But with the short story, uma akayithandi umfundi akundaba yami, ngiyazi mina ukuthi ngikufakile obekufanele ngikufake, but you can't say that you can't have the same confidence with a novel, because it's so multi-layered that one can perceive it from can look at it from analyze it from this perspective to the next. But with the short story, you have just one piece of work in front of you. If you appreciate it, so for me, sengidonsa kakhulu izinkondlo engangiqale ngazo-ke wengane ukuthi zangikhipha inkani-ke izinkondlo ngangiqale ngazo before I ventured into zangivova ngabathengi ngifuna uba zangikhipha inkani
wena uvova inkondlo awukazona
ngizace nje njengoba ungibona ngiphephuka nje izona inkondlo zavele zakhombisa ukuthi
mfokazi ngiyabona uyisilenda iy'nkondlo zonke
so-ke but-ke okunye obekwenza ukuthi mhlawumbe umuntu angakwazi ukubhala imisebenzi ethile isikhathi, njengoba uyazi nawe isikhathi sokubhala ubeke ngathi ukube abantu base-South Africa bayazithenga izincwadi, ngabe sibhala isikhathi esigcwele full time, where one could devote as much time as possible and explore izinto ezahlukahlukene but we can't have that because kufanele ngizosebenza ngifike ngo4 ekuseni nje la office ngiyasebenza ngoba kufanele ngisebenza kodwa kube bengibhala ngabe kuningi izinto esizibhala even for film for theater. Perhaps I could have ventured into that as well, but I can't do that because I have to contend with the immediate responsibilities, and basically writing has always to be left to the back burner so that one can feed one's family and yeah.
But okunye futhi even on the side of abantu abafunda incwadi isikhathi asikho. So even for me as well, you know, I was telling Uzuki, so Zuki, you know, you mustn't laugh. Ever since you know, I started you know, being a mother. Uyaloba ngala, uyasebenza ngala. So bengifunda ama-magazine for some years.
Oh, you don't know.
Ngithenga ibona magazine. Ngithenga ibona magazine, ne-drum magazine. Umimali khona ngithenge nofeleti nakho ngifuna. So ngiyamthenga nofeleti indaba ezithi. So manje ke, you know, I would find that I would gravitate towards the short story form.
Okay.
You know, because a short story, of course, you are able to read it in one sitting, you know, and have a complete world and have a complete experience, you know, from beginning to end. So I would then collect short story collections, you know, and just dip in and out and engage with literature in that way, you know. You know, you spoke about writing for pleasure. Writing for leisure. Ukuthi uzibhalela ubumnandi, uzibhalela ukuzi-entertaina wena. Nakanjani Sibiya. Ukuthi ibe mnandi le journey yakho njengoba uloba, awuhleke nje, uhleke ulale phansi kube mnandi, you know. But other people would say, you know what, a writer in society, a writer in a role, you know, whether it's holding up the mirror to society, or it is entertaining society, or it is questioning society, you know. So do you believe there is such a thing, you know, the writer needs to have a role in society, you know, or not?
Yeah, umbhali uneqhaza emphakathini. Kodwa akulula ukuthi alibone kahle iqhaza lakhe. Unfortunately for our country, as long as writers are not appreciated by their own people, it becomes difficult for them to identify a role that they have to play beyond writing. So, unlike in other societies where writers are celebrated and the community, the society will seek their opinion, their take on whatever is taking place in the society. So, unfortunately, in our country, writers are, as far as I'm concerned, you hardly come across cases where people will say, let us ask from writers what is their view on this matter. So they are not necessarily regarded as philosophers, as custodians of wisdom for our people. So so lokho kwenza ukuthi ke kushuba ngokuthi ke umbhali noma ebhali usengase abhale umathanda nje ngoba uyazi ukuthi is not necessarily as accountable. Nobody is going to quote them. It's so and so sad about this issue. Ngakho ke kwenza ukuthi umbhali angacabangi ngokwanele ngezinye izikhathi ukuthi le ncwadi yami izofundwa abantu bathathe izinqumo on the basis of what I have said as a writer. So okwenza ukuthi ke isikhathi esiningi kube sengathi sibhala nje ngoba kunesindaba ezisiphethe, but kwesinye isikhathi ayibikho lento ezothi uma ngase ngibhale kanjena abantu bazokweduka. uma ngase ngibhale kanjena isizwe singase sinothe singase izinkinga ezikhona zingase zilungise kwamanye amazwe writers can be very influential in derailing values society, but in some cases in confirming izinto ezinhle zalo mphakathi. But akulula ukuthi kwenzeke kangako esado ngoba imbono yabo ayicelwa ukuthi bathini ababhali ngephuzu elilithi noma kuthiwa ababhali ake nisibhaleleni into mhlawumbe engase ilungise le nkinga ekhona. Wele kuyenzeka mhlawumbe izimbogi zibizwe nako khona futhi zibizwa as entertainers azibizwa mhlawumbe akuthi eParliament ngeza isibonelo ake kube khona ababhali ukuthi nina ababhali niyibuka kanjani ngoba ababhali bayibuka into kwenye i-level ongase umuntu ongena umbhali angayibuki ngalo nje ithini imbono yenu nansi inkinga esibhekene nayo ningase nisilekelele kanjani njenge ngababhali. Ngakho ke kwenza ukuthi uma abantu bebhala mhlawumbe bakhohle lokho ukuthi lokhu engikubhalayo angisibhaleli mina njengengona kanjani kodwa ngikubhalela izizukulwane ezizayo ukuthi ngelilanga ziyothi mayifunda incwadi yami zikwazi zicaphune imbono ephusile ukuthi wayishilo una kanjani ukuthi mhlawumbe ngelinye ilanga kuyokwenzeka ukuthi nokuthi umbhalo othile lento wayibonile waqamba abalingiswa abathile sesiyakubona kwenzeka ube seyifundile incwadi yakhe sasozuza mhlawumbe sasoyigwema into nje without necessarily njengoba bengishilo ukuthi bashimayele noma bazenze abaprofeti kodwa babhala izinto ezingase zikwazi ukubona ukuthi uma kuqhubeka izinto kanjena isizwe singase sigcine sekwenzeke ukuthi nokuthi.
Hey, iqiniso limsule olukhulumayo indaba ezitha ngoba kwamanye amazwe kunjalo ngoba abalobi ama-leaders yibona abahambela phambili ukuze sibone indlela kubona kodwa as you rightly state ukuthi la ekhaya people won't approach bathi akuphawule nakanjani Sibiya usibonise indlela ukuthi yabona sibhekane ne-COVID ngoba ngiyabona eindatshaneni zakho even COVID uyakhuluma ngabo uyabona ukuthi bhekene nenhlekelele ye-COVID lana kunzima kuyakhuphukela but yinto ozilobela wena and nobody asked you ukuthi uphawule ngalolu daba but you just felt ukuthi what this is the world that you are living in and there is COVID-19 so you will write about real issues that reflect real people in real situations but Dokotela, I want to challenge you a bit because I have noticed in South Africa, that there is a proliferation of book clubs like you won't believe, there is one of the literary festivals or Abantu and so on, and when you look at the chats when you've been to and that's a wonderful thing about COVID that you've been to all of these online book fairs, you go to the Gaborone book fair and so on, and people are saying oh I'm so and so, you watch the chats and they say I'm so and so from such and such a book club, do you think ukuthi mhlawumbe we are turning a corner where people are seeing the value of books and the value of reading? Do you think there's a light at the end of the tunnel?
Yes, it is very exciting for writers to know that at least because we are not necessarily expecting everybody to love books. That will be impossible. But to know that there is an audience that appreciates writing, so that when I write, I will know that at least there will be a member of a reading club who will say, ongeke kufanele ukuthi ngimeshele ngencwadi ngithi hawo manje ngiyacela bandla ngiyancenga ngana ukuthi nayi incwadi hayi lethi incwadi umuntu ozothi kunencwadi ephumile ngiyayithenga. Ngakho ke kube siyazenzela ngabe sithi mhlambe ngokwesibonelo uyazi incwadi uma idayise u2000 units isuke eSouth Africa kusokuthiwa so if in our society we could identify about 2,000 for each book shicilela. Why was that? But that we need a buy-in from society. They will say from ngokwesibonelo ngiqhamuka egcotsheni uma abantu basegcotsheni bezothi nangu umbhali wasegcotsheni kudingeka ukuthi mhlambe incwadi yakhe idayisa amakhophi awu 2,000 thina basegcotsheni njengomphakathi sizothenga izincwadi ezo200 yabo abanye sebothenga omunye u200 abangamazi sebothenga abanye u200 for each writer that a writer who comes from Deep Kloof we will have about 200 from and then if they are good enough they can also have about 10 from Mlas abazothenga incwadi abanye about 10 from Google so that kungabi sengathi abelungu benza isimanga uma incwadi bestseller in Afrikaans, which we can do galula kulo nokwedlula belungu but njoba ngibuyela embozweni kwecomment yakho fortunately for us Department of Arts and Culture mhlawumbe ngibaziyo kwa-KZN there been initiatives to encourage ukuba khona kwama-reading clubs communities so ngamamazi uma ngase kube khona so that uma ngibhala incwadi yesiZulu ngizokwazi ukuthi ongenani akhona ama-reading clubs esifundazwe but ke siyazi ke unfortunately ke bakhona issue ukuthi imali ayikho abantu abakwazi ukuthenga so ingasibe khona indlela ngosibonelo mhlawumbe uma sibe khona into esiyakhulunywa kakhulu kube khona ukwelekelela mhlawumbe although ngeke kube lula kangako kuhulumeni ukuthi athi mhlawumbe uzosponsorisha incwadi shicilelo ukuze ingabizi kakhulu beyond ukuthi umuntu osenkandla osemsinga ayi-afford incwadi mangathiwa izoba u50 rand mhlawumbe abantu bazo ngoba bakhona abazithandayo izincwadi abantu abahluphayo emphakathini ethu ilaba abafundile abanamajazi abekho abantu abangayifundi incwadi njengabantu abanamajazi kodwa uma sekuthiwa umuntu nje ozidalela emakhaya kufika izincwadi uma kunencwadi ebhalwe umuntu wasendaweni uzoyithola ngo50 rand bangase abantu bakhuthazeke ukuthi bafunde nababhali bekwazi ukuthi baqhubeke babhale so ke kuyajabulisa ukuthi maningi ama-reading clubs ngapho ko-Gauteng kuyajabulisa ngoba even if they cannot buy all books for all writers, but to know that there is a vibrant culture of reading somewhere. They may not necessarily buy my book, but to know that some authors get their books read and bought by their own people. So for me, it's a very exciting development with support from authors and support from because if we do not produce good literary works, the interest will become lukewarm and they will say, no, let us support other art forms.
Kodwa iphuzu lakho libalulekile dokotela ukuthi nohulumeni akasixhase bandla because abanye abantu bayafuna ukufunda incwadi and basupporte ama-writers esendaweni kodwa incwadi ka-220 iyembe emqolo ndaba ezitha so
ngoba nathi siyayithanda nje izincwadi kodwa ngeke ngibone ekhaya ukuthi ngempela ngibuye nezincwadi ezo5 ubone ukuthi 1,000 rand ke mina ngoba kuyaphoqa ngiyombhala I have to be an omnivorous reader and I have to support fellow authors uma ngibone incwadi kuyazenzakala ukuthi ngithenge ezinye kuzothiwa ngoba awuyifundi nje but because it's an addiction but then there would be an author who would like to buy but they can't afford that particularly because mhlambe abanawo inhlanhla ukuthi basebenze njengami noma ngekhona ukuthi ngisebenza umsebenzi oholela imali enkulu kodwa ngiyakwazi ukuthi lento engithandayo ngikwazi ukuthi I can support my addiction if I were to put it.
And in fact, bakhala, abantu abathenga incwadi bathi uhulumende maka drop iVAT eincwadi, mayisuswe iVAT, so that books can be cheaper, you know. But I just wanted to say to you, and I'm not sure if it's too early for you to call it, Ngoba, you ventured now into kind of focusing on English as well as isiZulu. Do you see a difference in the market? Ukuthi mhlawumbe, you know, abantu bazithokozela kakhulu incwadi zesiZulu noma ezesingisi. Have you noticed any shifts in terms of how the market is reacting to you as Nakanjani Sibiya, writing in isiZulu or writing in English? Is there a marked difference or not?
No, it's early days for one to ascertain, you know, whether where the flow in terms of, you know, but I've noticed that in some cases enye into eyenzekile abantu bebenga ubuthi uma ufika nesiZulu athi hayi ngabe bengcono ba uphethe eyesingisi uma sengibhalile eyesingisi beke ngabe besayithenga but okunye okwenzekayo you will find that you are expecting a person to buy esiZulu athi ngicela eyesingisi, so akabi isikhathi sesifishane kakhulu le ncwadi iphume ngo-August akabe lula ukuthi ngibone ukuthi ama trends athini.
Yeah, no, early days. Early days, yeah. But you know, or is it also too early to ask ukuthi, you know, what's next? What are you cooking? Khona ezinye futhi ezidonsisa amathe, kwenzakalani ekitchen?
No, I'm on diet. I'm no longer cooking. No, unfortunately, one has to do a lot of multitasking. I'm an academic, so one has to focus on my academic responsibilities as well. And then, of course, one wouldn't like to flood the market with new books and all. Yeah. So I have to pace myself and say after 5 years. But then, as a writer, you always have ideas. Yeah. So anything can happen, not necessarily in the near future, but there's going to be a follow-up on Reluctant Storyteller. There's also going to be another collection of short stories. Perhaps I will go back to my poetry days and start ngibhale izikondlo futhi ngibona ukuthi zisengangihlula yini mase ngigugile mhlawumbe ngisengabuyela nalapha, but yeah, one is always writing either at idea level or at aspiration. That one I would aspire to write something at
So we have 5 minutes to wrapping up, but I just wanted to ask you, which mhlawumbe, you know, in terms of the younger generation who are coming up, abantu abaloba ngesiZulu, you know, who do you, or whether inkondlo, noma ama noveli, noma ama short story, who do you see bubbling under? Who is the next Nakanjani Sibiya?
Awuloda ukuthi mhlambe kungasokuhluphe esiZulwini ngoba kunezinkinga eziningi ezenza ukuthi bangabonakali ngokwanele ababhali akufani nasesingisi. There's a lot of frustrations eyenza ukuthi bangabonakali ababhali abasha ngokwanele. Kungaba ukuthi ziyaphuma izincwadi zingafinyeleli kahle emphakathini, kokunye ziphume zingabikho ezingeni lokuthi umbhali aqhame ngokwanele, kodwa bayaningi ababhali abakhona ngashona ilanga motimezama. There's a lot of potential. Njengoba ngisho imisebenzi eminingi iyedlula kumina, ngiyakwazi ukubona yeah bakhona ababhali, and angiboni ukuthi mhlambe babhala ngoba befisa ukubhala njengona kanjani, noma befisa ukumedlula, benza lokho okufika kubona. But ababhali particularly kwi-short story genre, i-short story genre mhlambe angangosho kunababhali abahle bezindaba ezifishane zesiZulu ababhala ngendlela elinganayo nababhala ngesingisi. Esizathu esangenza ukuthi ngibhale irole ngoba kwabakhona lokho kube sengathi ezulwini kuyadlalwa nje uma kubhala. So ngangifuna ukuveza ukuthi zikhona izindaba ezifishane abantu abangayibukeli phansi imibhalo ebhalwe ngesiZulu nangezinye izilimi zomdabu ngoba kuyabhalwa nakhona akusiniswa amahlezi.
Nakanjani Sibiya, bekumnandi ngendlela eyisimanga ukuxoxa nawe.
Yes.
And as I said at the beginning of ingxoxo yethu ukuthi bengi-intimidated ngoba ngikhuluma nowasebukhosini makuza ekubhaleni inkondlo, makuza ekubhaleni ama-novel, makuza ekubhaleni ama-short story, so I really am honored. And I want to say thank you to you and thank you to Afrolit Sans Frontiers ukuthi basinike ithuba ukuthi sixoxe. It's a beautiful platform, and it's really been a great honor. Manje I did say ukuthi I will be putting you on the spot a few times, and inkondlo zakho ngempela they are very powerful and impactful. So ubungashiya ngeyodwa nje usithi nje va uma sesivala.
Ngizoyithatha phi? Asekho isikhathi ngiyonishiya ngelinye ilanga. Siphelile isikhathi manje. How much time do we have?
Uthi kudoja sine 3 minutes. We have as much time as we need. So sizophela isikhathi uma usuyifundile inkondlo. Uyabaleka bengishilo ndaba ezinto ukuthi ngizokubeka on the spot ukuthi
ngabe bengiyaphi? Ayikho inkondlo emfishane la. Mina ngibhale izikondlo ezinde. Ayi.
Nayo leyo right.
Wawukuphi? Namuhla uma ngingqongqoza eminyango kabavuli bathi ngangikuphi ngemzuzu yomunyu abakithi bevika izingwenya namabhubesi bevika izinhlamvu namabhomu bevika izimvubu namagovu bedayiswa izimpimpi besishulwa bedingiswa bevala imilomo bevalelwa belengiswa benqoqozwa befa bengavalelisanga befa bengangcwatsha. Namuhla uma ngqongqoza eminyango akuvulwa kuthiwa ngangikuphi ngemzuzu yomunyu abakwethu bethwele izinqwembe bepongoloza bekhuza iziqubulo bevala amasango kungangeni umuntu bevala imigwaqo kungadluli imoto befumbetha amatshe begodla amathayi bokhela amalangabi bebhula amalangabi beyidudule yabafo beyikhama imoya beyidudule yabafo beyigoba inkani.
Dokotela Nakanjani.
Namuhla uma ngqongqoza eminyango. Yes.
Sibonge
siyabonga.
Afrolit Sans Frontier. Sibonge ngendlela eyisimanga ndaba.
Sibonga kakhulu. Yes.
Sibonge nabonke ababukeli endaweni lapho bebabuke khona. Siyabonga. Ngiyathemba sizoxhumana in the future as well.
Yes. Thank you very much.